Hi and welcome to this week's Weekly Outlook. This is Kim speaking on Monday the 14th of May. So what we've got in store this week, we shall start off looking at the fundamentals. The key data coming out this week. Let me just widen this page a little bit if I can, just so you can get a bit more of it. It just doesn't want to, my mouse doesn't want to sit on it. Let's try it on the lower side of things. There we go. That's better. Right, okay, so this week very little information, well nothing today, very little the rest of the week really, but some key numbers then is the employment data, very key on Tuesday at 9:30 for the UK, particularly looking at the average earnings. We saw inflation slightly softening. Are we going to see average earnings continue to soften as well? This does start or continue to take the heat off of interest rate increases, although there's still expected to be one in the next year, not necessarily the calendar year, but it's expected to be one. If these figures start slowing down too much, it will see some weakness in the pound, I would suggest. Looking further down here, I'm just looking, we've got so that's the employment data there. Looking further down on Tuesday 1:30 p.m. core retail sales. Again, this is quite a key figure. US seems to have started slowing down a little bit, some of the numbers coming across. This could well be watched a little bit more intensely, so we'll just watch out for that 1:30 on Tuesday. The core retail sales is the most important thing there. It's alright having some good numbers, but you want the consumers to be spending as well, particularly in economies such as the US and UK economy. Okay, Japanese GDP due out Wednesday morning 12:50 AM, so that may create some volatility for the yen. Certainly any slow up on that, any further slow up on that would be disappointing there. May see the yen weaken further. Draghi's speech here, he's speaking, it's not a key feature. I'm not too sure why it's sitting there as a red line there. It's not important. Particularly it's an address as most anything else, and anything that's likely to have been said will have been said previously, so not interested in that. Looking further down then, manufacturing sales, Canada, I'm not too fussed with that. Building permits, got an FOMC speaker on the Wednesday afternoon there. Maybe we'll see some volatility around that, but in general we've got nothing through to industrial production capacity utilization. Now these figures really haven't done too much for quite some time, but might start coming into play a little bit more as the capacity increases. But this looks like, well, we'll see how things go here. The more the utilization rate increases, the more pressure it puts on prices, so we'll start watching that, but at the moment it's not that significant. Crude oil inventories, well, that may be a bit more significant with the situation and tensions in the Middle East. Side of that, Thursday then, Aussie employment data, that always gives the a kick to the Aussie dollar if you're trading that, so be aware of that at 2:30. It may be good, may be bad, you never know on that one. Side of that, really inflation for Canadian inflation and core retail sales coming out on Friday, so it really is quite a week in significant news, especially, yeah, very quiet. Okay, so look at the technicals. Before I look at each technical, I'll look at what's happening sentiment wise. We'll look at this across. This is the dealer, so these are always going to be negative, or generally negative, or massively bullish, depending on what the market's doing here. Negative is pretty flat week on week here. It's actually dropped a little bit, which is suggesting a slight bullish hint over the last couple of weeks. The bigger asset managers, well, they're holding their long position, slight fall off there, and net positions, some on the long side of the euro coming off marginally. The more aggressive hedge funds here, they've started building their long positions, but at the same time building their short positions, although marginally increasing the long side versus the short side, so net just kicking up a little bit there, but overall it looks like most of that's hedged out. Retail side then, just looking at the retail side on here, well, still net on the bullish side, but again that's sliding off there, so maybe a bit of an agreement in general across the markets there. Okay, so let's look at the technicals regarding the euro. From a weekly perspective, we put in this lovely hammer last week into the 200. There was some other support around the whole numbers there. Seeing a bit of a push up from it today, first part of the week here. It's my key level late last week when I got back was looking at that daily 8. It managed to close, well, push through it, not close through it last week. It may well close through it, we'll see this week, but at the moment it looks like it could be on for the daily 200, maybe the daily 21. There is some sort of softening there of the US dollar, and even though we got the tensions in the Middle East, it still seems to be showing some sort of softness there. So maybe we'll get a bit more movement on the shorter time frames. We're seeing high lows, higher highs, so really we should probably be looking at the long side, but we have got the weekly pivot below us at the moment, and that may yet cause a draw down at some point at least. More likely to be at the beginning part of the week, but we'll see. Okay, cable. Let's look at the fundamentals, and we've looked at the fundamentals. Let's look at the sentiment for cable. So we'll start off with dealer side first and see what the situation there. Okay, so quite a swing here in terms of now this is normally the more long side. That means that effectively it's selling more short. Now it's swinging around a little here and cross the zero line in net positions. Now when it does this, it can give us a sort of a bit more of a clue that we could see the dollar, the cable weakening some more, or it's suggesting it's a weaker cable from that perspective. Asset managers, what they're doing with it, they've been bearish quite a long time there. Now their positions are, well, okay, they switched back down a little bit here, got a little bit more bearish again, reducing back to the bearish side. So the hedge funds, well, they've dropped off their bullish sort of side of things has really dropped off, and that there's no surprise that coming over the last few weeks as the chances of an interest rate increase in May obviously got shot to pieces and didn't happen last week. And it's looking not so bullish now, and of course we've got the situation with Brexit in the headlines all the time, so that may well suggest that there's a lack of love for cable. Let's have a quick look at the retail. Well, they're actually starting to well, they're perhaps getting a bit more bearish on it as well. I'm just looking at here, still net bullish, but just those bears are sort of catching up with things, so maybe that the overall consensus is pretty similar there. Now technically then, well, ironically it looks like it may actually be catching a bounce here, or trying to catch a bounce here at the moment. It's very odd price action here. Expanding wedge is a sort of the bigger picture, maybe a diamond when you look at the shorter time frames. Let's just come out to weekly for a moment here, and I was wondering whether it would run down towards that weekly 50. It sort of would have been the next obvious target below us, but we put the doji in on the weeklies. Potential, well, close back inside, may see us pushing up towards the weekly 21, and maybe a move which sort of conflicts with some of the sentiment across the markets there, but the sentiment is as I sort of really demonstrated there, a lot of it's quite balanced, and okay, maybe switching, so we need to be a bit wary of it, but we'll see how we go. At the moment though, cable has that potential, if the markets and the dollar weakens, to push towards that weekly 21. Daily wise, as I've said, it's a funny old pattern here. Shorter time frame, well, it may suggest that we may get a little bit more movement. Some of the price action, higher lows, higher, struggling on the higher front. It may have just clipped it this morning, may push through this afternoon. So from a shorter term frame, that daily, we're already above the daily weekly here at the moment. We haven't actually touched it, it's below us. Sorry, daily weekly, the weekly pivot even. Get my head in gear. The weekly pivot is actually below us on this chart, so any reversal would be a good target, but it does look like we could potentially push up if we see these markets pushing through, but I'd be wary of cable walls being a slightly weaker one if it does get a wiggle. Oh, okay, let's look at what we here was sitting on next. Is the yen, dollar yen. Sentiment wise first, then let's have a look at big picture dealer situation. Not a lot of change on the short side, but the long side pitching up here now. As I said, this is a bit of a reversal, so it suggests there could be some weakness coming through, or confirm some weakness, potential weakness. Asset managers, let's have a look at the bigger boys from that point of view. Bullish side dropping off there, but so is the bearish side. Not really giving me too much hint. Let's have a look at the hedge funds, etc. Okay, it's quite flat again, isn't it? I mean, it's been relatively flat. It's not really showing me too much more than flatness. Slight pick up, and you see the net positions are almost going to switch over here, and as those net positions start switching over, this is when we start getting often see a bit more of a pickup in the market. So at the moment it's looking bullish, and this could just pitch up on this, remembering it's inverted here, so this is a US dollar yen, so that sign of weakness can be shown as a push upwards here potentially. It's just come out to the weeklies first and see where we are. Never got into that weekly 50 yet. Now if the other markets, the pound and dollar, were to start reversing here with these sort of shooting stars, and doji there, shooting star, may see us drop that back down towards that weekly 8. From this picture though, it's with the upper trend, it's been sitting on the trend line all last week. That was drawn across from the previous lows there. Last week it sat on that quite a number of times, tested it. At the moment it looks like it may pitch on through it. That daily 200 looks like a potential. Maybe the weekly, the monthly R1 could be in line. That's pretty much it there. There's nothing else. It's already through its weekly pivot, so erring on the bullish side there for me. Aussie dollar, let's have a look at the sentiment. So the Aussie dollar sentiment very bullish on the long side for the on the long side here for the dealers, which really means quite bearish in real terms. Asset managers bearish, very bearish. There's the other side of that market you're looking at, leveraged. So bit more neutral. This is switching down a little bit on the hedge funds here. The hedge funds are getting a little bit. Maybe switching their allegiance a little bit, but they had gone quite long a couple of weeks ago. That long side coming off a little bit, short side going back. Well, maybe we will see more potential short side, and the short side, well, built up here quite significantly, a little bit different to what we're seeing on a lot of the retail traders and brokers and normal brokers. So these future positions quite bearish looking for the retail side, but on the broker side of things, retail broker side is still seeing quite a bullishness. Now they could be right to see some sort of bullishness, and they could be right on this particular occasion. We're seeing this doji going and crossing at the moment again, and there is a chance we could pitch up on these weeklies. I mean, if it manages to carry on as it is, it could pitch into that weekly 8 sort of area. It comes nicely with, I've left that previous trend line on there. It's quite significant still, that sort of level, so I've left that sitting through there, but it comes in quite significantly with a number of moving averages. From a daily perspective, well, we've still got the monthly pivot above that. Could be a draw for it. It's, to me, it's last week it put a shooting star in, came short of the daily 21 there, came short of that, and it has a weekly pivot underneath it, and the way that it's been sitting there just a little bit weaker. Well, I do wonder if we get a proper short squeeze go on. I say short squeeze, long squeeze go on here for all those retail traders that are sitting there in their long positions, whether we'll get that squeezed, and when that starts coming down, maybe we'll see a proper bounce here. But we have got some key news out for the Aussie dollar later in the week. Okay, Canadian dollar. Let's have a look at the CAD here first. Let's have a look from the dealer perspective. Not a great deal. It's a bit slight increase on the which would be on the short side. Overall, asset managers, yeah, the short side's starting to pick up a little bit there. Quite flat and quite an equal sort of situation there. So it's not massively biased in one direction or the other at the moment. Although it's blinking bearish on the although they're starting to get a bit of bullishness starting to creep in there maybe, but pretty bearish on the hedge funds on in terms of the CAD's outlook there at the moment, although the last 3 weeks was lower. And the retail, well, they're catching on with a slight edge towards the bearishness. So where are we sitting here? Well, bearishness here means upside as opposed to downside, because this is the US dollar stroke CAD, whereas the other is just the Canadian dollar as it stands. So bearishness, as I say, we would be expecting more upside. And to be fair, before we saw the troubles in Iran and everything and the oil prices running up, I did expect the Canadian dollar to continue to the upside. It was pitching that way. It looked like it had more potential for that upside. So we'll see how it reverses this daily at the moment. The weekly side of things, though, of course, again, well, it's pretty close to that 21 moving average. It may just come down double bottom or something and find a bit of support from where it's sitting at the moment. Sitting in a relatively tight, I've just put the channel lines on that, the upper channel line and lower channel line, sitting pretty neutral in the middle there at the moment, though, not really giving too much of a clue away. If it does start breaking down beyond much below the prior lows there, last week's lows, or perhaps we may see sort of some chase down to 25.38 area, maybe some more down to 124. Just need to see if oil prices settle themselves out, though. I think we'll see the Canadian dollar carry on pushing to the upside. Okay, and finally, someone's asked me to do New Zealand dollar, so I should totally ignore that request. See if we've got anything. Oh, they do cover some cot analysis on the New Zealand dollar, so he is in luck. So it's had a really strong bearish earlier, and just before late last month, just started slipping off, getting a little bit. Now remember that this bearishness is often a sign of bullishness. It's inverted, but that's now starting to slide the other way a little bit. So and as you can see here on the asset manager side of things, more so is well, it's a neutral sort of, it's pulled down to that sort of neutral area, and the hedge funds are a little bit bullish on the New Zealand dollar there. So an edge of bullishness of the New Zealand dollar. And the retail side there at the moment, well, going quite bearish, and it's quite odd. It's gone quite bearish now when it's so low, but there we are. On this weekly chart, it does still look pretty bearish from all aspects of stronger momentum picking up through there. It's well, and this daily point as well looks like it could be running down there. I can see the divergences running across on the RSI here. I don't know if the same on the MACD. No, that's still pushing down lower, and my tendency, it's running to that weekly pivot. It does look weak, so we could just see a continuation in that direction. Now, I haven't looked at the fundamentals on the New Zealand dollar this week. I'm not too sure what's coming out there, but technically and from sentiment point of view, maybe the weakness, particularly more so on the, I'm looking at the leverage side of things here, bearishness starting to build up again there as well. Right, that's pretty much it for me this week. I hope you have a great week, and I'll be back next week, or maybe the week after, because I'm going to be away next week on Monday. Have a great one. Bye for now.